So I submitted my formal complaint to the RCVS. The date for the first investigation meeting was set to 25th of May 2011. A lot of letters went back and forth, and after each reply I put it out of mind as to not let these people keep infiltrating my life. I didn't enjoy this process, but it did seem to bring some quietness to their insane postal fascination. The letter of conclusion came dated 4th of May 2012, and they concluded that they couldn't tell him off for bad behaviour or some shit like that. I don't mind, I had the quiet I was looking for. We're still not done though, so grab another coffee and let's keep going. Like I mentioned earlier, when my son asked questions, I would answer them at the level of understanding he was at. Yes, he has a father, and no, he isn't around. Yes, he does have a father, and no, we cannot talk to him. His dad is busy and cannot be with us. His dad has another family and is busy with them. No, we can't be together. Then the bigger questions started, so I answered as honestly as I could. Yes, he was married when I knew him, and I truly believed he wouldn't stay married for too much longer. Yes, I loved him. No, he didn't love me back, but I didn't know that at the time. Yes, he knows about you. Yes, there are other children, and no, we cannot talk to them. It went on. When my son turned 13 years old in 2021, he decided, now he was older, that he wanted to try again for child maintenance. I wasn't sure how I felt about this, and I explained that the last time they told me they were going to take him away from me, and it concerned me. He assured me that he is older now, and he understood that he had a say in it, and he still wanted to proceed. And that's what we did. I supported his decision, and I filled out the forms and started the process. The father, of course, tried everything he could think of not to pay, even saying the child wasn't his. DNA test it is then, with all the old words hanging their sorry head over every step of this experience. The dreaded DNA test that would have sparked a court case of child stealing all those years ago still whispered their sweet little threats in my ears. But we were all different now, or at least I was. Eventually, my son received a few payments here and there before he decided once again that this was beneath him and paying for a child wasn't something he was prepared to do. The current outstanding amount stands at $26,000 plus. Someone then found their way to Facebook Messenger and decided to message me. Looking back through my messages, the first one there is dated May the 4th, 2024, and deleted. He did this often, sent a message, waited or not for the reply, and then deleted his message. Not all, I have a lot that he would now rather I didn't. I replied for one simple reason, to try and help my son get the money he felt he was entitled to. This didn't go as planned, and I now wish I hadn't replied at all. However, I did, and that is something I cannot take back. I can, however, learn from it and understand how people like this work and how they will never change. I can change though, and I can learn, and I can allow my child, who is now a young man himself, know how not to behave. These messages went back and forth for a while and only when he wanted, so still on his terms. He told me he had never stopped thinking about me. This made me smile because I'd forgotten all about him for months at a time, and he only came to mind when the CSA got in contact to tell me he hadn't paid. So the thoughts were never pleasant, and they never ever reached missing him. He was clearly still lying, as he would tell me he no longer lived in this country, so the child support agency couldn't touch him, and then he would tell me he lived in Wales. He continued with his, "Are you happy to share me with my wife?" messages, so nothing at all had changed with him. He was still the super creep of the century while pretending to be holier than thou. What an absolute shame for his wife. The one that wrote so many times telling me that if I gave my child to them, they would raise him in a united home and this piece of shit of a man would never cheat again. He's better now, and they were solid together. Well, as solid as ice in a broken freezer, it turns out. He asked me to get the child support agency off his back and he'll pay me directly. That sounds good from a respectable person, but hey, I'm not so sure trust is here. And then the kicker of a message, after asking me if I remembered that first time, and him going into so much detail that it made my stomach curdle faster than milk left out on a summer's day, he sent me a moody photo of himself with no top on. 1 second, let me compose myself from fainting with desire. And then, now send me a sexy shower photo back of you. Wait, what the actual fuck? He asked me to meet him and he'll buy me dinner. I can't eat, sorry, allergies. Coffee then, a walk maybe. Yeah, maybe. I never sent a sexy photo. I never had any intention of meeting this deadbeat for a coffee or a walk, although I like both. And I never received any money for the work I'd put into these soul-destroying conversations. My son, now 17, wanted to know more about his siblings and asked if we could find out about them. I figured I could use the fact he messages to ask, so I sent one first to him this time and asked if he was about. He replied, hoping I was ready to jump into his bed, and instead I asked for recent photos of his children. I explained my son wanted to see them, and asked if they knew about him. Surprise, surprise, no they didn't. I told him that's not ideal, as if they found out another way, that's harder on them. He said he knew, it was just easier this way. Sure, tell yourself that so you can keep the illusion as long as possible that you are in fact a man of God and not a piece of scum that you really are, still chasing some dream that he had no right chasing. Honestly, keep me out of your sordid thoughts and don't picture me sexy in any regard. My son found these, all but one, grown-up siblings, and he decided he wanted to message them. This part is beautiful and so sad. He spoke to the oldest sister and oldest brother, both now living in South Africa, and they were and are so welcoming to him. They told him they were shocked and very surprised as they were aware their father had an affair, but never knew there was another child. They spoke and my son felt as accepted as he can in this situation. I want to take a moment to say these two seem like amazing people, so to give credit where credit is due, the parents did well raising kind children. However, even serial killers can raise well-adjusted, kind children, so it's not saying much about them as people away from being parents. My son then met up with the next two younger brothers in a coffee shop near to where we live. This went very well, and although my son was working through big emotions of his own, they all had a successful meetup. I can't imagine what was going through the heads of these two young men, one being close in age to my son, but I can say they put him at ease. So again, these parents had raised some good people. I will be eternally grateful that these children, now grown-ups, acted the way they did and allowed connection with my son. The questions that each one must have must be huge, and for all of them to be able to have some connection, I would assume, would only allow them to process this a little easier. My son grew up knowing who he was. These children have had the ground ripped out from under them as their parents created a lie. A lie they are still trying to hold up and live by, and we all know eventually the truth prevails. The daughter had been asking my son personal questions about how I had met their father and what the circumstances were around it. She was asking my son as her parents wouldn't talk about it, and the father had said he had put this to bed several years ago. Hang on a second, by my calculations he was still messaging, so unless time works differently in South Africa, he's still lying to them too. She then asked if I would be willing to share my side with her, so I contacted her and agreed to send an email. She went on to have more understandable questions and I answered them, advising her to only ask what she needs to know and not necessarily what she would like to know, as I will answer, and she is the one who would have to process this and still live with this guy she calls dad. We corresponded a few times and I remarked on how wonderful she seems and that I was truly sorry for my part in this. I had mentioned that I was still getting messages from this guy, so she asked for screenshots. I chose them wisely and never shared the very graphic sexual messages, just the ones that showed he still wanted to meet up with me and thought about me often. Oh, and the one where he wanted to share me with his wife. Again, what she did with these messages I showed her I will never know, but to me, honestly, in such clouded times, surely leads closer to healing than trying to pretend these things never happened. As far as I know, the father and wife are still together. Whether she still thinks he hasn't done this before or after me is again something I will never know. Whether she will ever comprehend what it did to us to have to live with the threat she wanted to take my child from me, I no longer worry myself with. And whether she is truly happy with the decisions she made is none of my business. What is my business is making sure my child knows he is loved enough for both parents. And while I couldn't give my son all the fancy trimmings that money can buy, I have given him everything and more that he has needed. And whether we followed a Christian lifestyle or not, all my children have integrity and grace. They have more morals than this guy could ever muster, as well as being able to admit to themselves and others when they have made a mistake, and above all, they know they can learn from them. I have never hidden who I was from them, so they too can realise that bad decisions, often made in times of being unprepared, can be learned from, and you can improve yourself, and you can, and should, keep moving forward. My son asked his new sister to ask the guy to send a voice message. My son doesn't want to talk to him directly, but he wants to hear his voice at least once in his lifetime. The guy, the shit stain on everyone's life, didn't reply. Because I see a need in him that he feels needs to be filled by someone unable to get out of their own way, I offered for him to read the above letters. He wanted to, and now realises that this guy and his wife not only ate the forbidden fruit, but grew an orchard in their own backyard. I know we all make mistakes. Geez, my childhood is scattered with them. And I know everyone can be forgiven, as long as they are taking steps needed to be a better person. But these two, they settled in and they made a home there. They fertilised their mistakes, tended to them, and tended to each other, while the world around them was expected to fall into line. While they can't hurt me anymore, I do have concerns that their inability to see past their own noses will hurt my son, while he learns that not everyone who speaks with truth. Yesterday we had an update to this. His sister messaged to let him know his wife had given her husband an ultimatum, my son or her. She is making him choose between staying with her and talking to, even possibly having a relationship with, his own child. It shouldn't matter whether her thoughts about me were correct and I did in fact go all out to trap her husband in a lifelong battle of co-parenting. This is a child who is separate from me, a child who has asked to hear the voice of a man who helped create him and give him life. I asked the question, what would God say about this decision? She went on and told my son that the wife has also told all the children to cut my son off and to not talk to him. Flabbergasted is an understatement. Just when I thought this woman couldn't go any lower, she is telling her grown-up children to cut off a child who is also processing his own reality and where he stands in this world. Again, he is separate to me. He is a person in his own right and did not choose to be part of this. I have kept him safe and away from this for 17 years, and while I can recommend that my son does not trust this guy, if he chose to, I would support him, because after year upon year of growing and finding who I am, and learning from every mistake I have made with this guy, my son deserves to follow his own heart. My son is not a threat to this woman. He is a child to a man who repeatedly couldn't keep control of his dick, and whether he talks to my son or not, this is the problem she will always have. This recent outcome has made me wonder if this guy was actually right all along, and she was the controlling person in their marriage, and he was actually incredibly unhappy. Well, even if this were true, wouldn't change my feelings about him now, which are pretty dismal. There is a part of me that is pondering on the fact that maybe he is stuck, and that is why he goes looking for relief outside of the marriage. It's just a consideration, and not an excuse for his abhorrent behaviour. It is important to remember that this guy was 33, 34 when I met him. He was 38 when I fell pregnant, and he is 57 now. He spent 17 years pretending my son didn't exist, and 4 years intentionally dodging child support, all while still asking me for shower photos and sex. How I wish I had sent him an actual photo of my shower. All these ages were and are old enough to know better and do better, and all these actions were and are unforgivable. If this woman wasn't the controlling one, just a thought, why in any country, with God present there or not, hold on so tight? Sitting back now and looking at all that played out, there are times when someone will ask me a question, namely my youngest daughter. Her questions are always so deep, and the way she asks them sometimes sound like they're coming from a judgmental grandmother waiting to tell you off. Because of this and her wonderful ability to ask, I get to have the outstanding opportunity to look within once again and feel where the question hits me. So, am I ashamed? No. No, I am not. It would be impossible to feel shame over something that brought a beautiful baby into the world who grew to be a perfect representation of a young man and nothing at all like his father. It would be wrong to place being ashamed over all the lessons that presented themselves at the feet of action after action that could have been avoided, yes, but then so would have he, and I wouldn't be without him. I cannot feel ashamed about falling in love with someone, whether that was through deception or not, because love is beautiful, and I will not live my life with shame attached when we both played our parts in this. I have spent countless hours, days, weeks, and years looking at my actions from when I was a broken little girl, looking back at myself and how I presented myself as a lost and vulnerable young woman, and I cannot tell myself I should have known better, when in the moment I simply did not. I was never taught to know better, and certainly was not taught to accept better. The other woman is all I allowed myself to be, and at the time that was what I thought I would always be. So for it to have been all I knew, when I had no toolbox to pull from, and everyone, including the guy who was 13 years older than me, that I ended up face to face with, giving me just another reason to fail, how could I have done it any differently? Meaning, how could I feel ashamed about something that was inevitable for me to fall prey to? So be angry at me, place the blame at my feet, shout down at me from your pedestal, but remember there is always more than one side to every story. I didn't brush my own hand on the lead up to this, or press my own body into myself as I walked around a large consultant room. I didn't spend time cultivating a psyops so I could use it to my advantage and then make myself feel bad for falling for something I didn't realise was happening, but I also didn't leave at that point. Instead, I developed feelings, and I take full responsibility for that. I didn't call me after reading that letter I sent and invite myself round. But I did write the letter, and I take full responsibility for that. I didn't take me by the hand and then use strength to get my own satisfaction, but I did stay and let that happen, and I did fall into character of being submissive and easily overcome, and I take full responsibility for that. I didn't set all the rules of how this would play out, and I certainly didn't hide this from my wife and kids. I was transparent with my family. My young daughter was too young to know. She just grew up knowing this guy as someone who was interested in her, and I did not make myself pregnant. I was on the pill, and he did not wear a condom. I didn't walk away from the new baby, and I didn't continue to lie when the truth came out. I was open and honest, and when my son asked any questions, I answered them at the point he was at. I didn't choose to send letters that insisted if I asked for child maintenance that I would go all out to make myself look unfit to be a mother. I did reply though, and I did cancel the child maintenance because by this point I had realised just how toxic these two people were, and I was not prepared to take the risk that they had more money than I did to spin a court case that they would further fund with their lies that literally fell off their skin like a snake shedding. I didn't abandon my responsibilities. I grew and I accepted them with grace and pride. These two people cannot say the same. So while they and others can stand and say that as the other woman, I am the only one in the wrong, I would say look at the whole picture and ask the questions. I would never say my actions were justified, and while I will never feel ashamed around this, again, I have grown and I have healed these broken parts of myself. And I can hand on heart say I would never put myself back in that situation again. I have taught myself with the help of some professionals to look for the weak links in others and to cut those cords, to look within if there are moments of confusion or temptation and find within myself where the need may arise to answer the call of a fractured man and then continue to heal. These things have never come easy to me, as I was 30 years old when I fully placed myself on the path of true healing. 30 years old when I decided to look at every decision I had ever made and rewrite how my future would go. 30 years old when I started to take full responsibility for who I had been and who I wanted to be, and to do this in front of my children to this very day. The children who I am so proud of I could burst and who make me so happy. I would never want it any other way. So while I can look back and say this whole situation was a mess from start to now, I wouldn't go back and change it, as I am the person I am today because of it. And the son I look at, the young man who is perfect, is an outcome I would never take back. So no, I am not ashamed. I am a better person because of it, and I am grateful.